Hey everyone, welcome back to Mental Notes with Matt. Today's guest is someone I've known since our time at Rutgers. He was in the MFA program while I was working toward my BFA at Mason Gross School of the Arts. Years ago, he actually took some of my best headshots. But today, he's leading something very different and honestly, very needed. Michael Cinquino has been doing incredible work helping leaders, creatives, and students communicate with more presence, empathy, and authenticity through what he calls the actor's approach to compelling communication. He's blending neuroscience, performance, and emotional intelligence to change how people show up in business and in life. Michael also recently shared that he is in the top 1% of emotional and sensory processors in the world. A highly sensitive person with rare genetic markers that give him deep emotional capacity, intense perception, and a unique leadership perspective. His posts struck a chord with me because I know what it's like to feel things really deeply and wonder if that's a weakness, when in reality, it might be your greatest strength. So today, we're talking about what it means to lead with emotional intelligence, how high sensitivity can be a superpower, and why charisma has more to do with curiosity and flexibility than anything else. So, Michael Cinquino, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see you.
Matt Ungerma. Am I saying that correctly? Because I used to know you as Unger.
Yeah, oh my gosh. In my early days, getting into the acting industry, feeling like the name Unger would be more appealing in some way. It's Ungerma, but I think Ungerma is kind of like what I hear from most people, and it's not wrong. But yeah, so thank you very
Of
much
course.
for joining me. So I guess let's start with your story. How did you go from actor and photographer to launching something like the actor's approach? What was the shift like for you?
Oh, wow. So that was quite a journey. And I think I'll start with my biggest takeaway is that you just don't know where the path might lead you. And Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist Joseph Campbell, for those of you who might know him or don't know him, he's definitely worth looking up. He has a belief, and he says, follow your bliss and don't be afraid. And he said, doors will appear where you thought there were only walls, and when you're following your bliss, people will come into the field of your bliss. This is all a roundabout way of saying that if you're doing something that lights you up, good things are more likely to happen. And I do truly believe that when we're doing something that we enjoy, good things happen. Now this doesn't mean easy. This doesn't mean like, oh, it's all enjoyable or every aspect of it is just easy. And gotta cry. She's like, I'm an Episcopalian. I'll cry quietly in my room later. All right.
Right.
I'm not going to cry in public. Okay. This is not what I do. But, he helps her to this. And it was really interesting for me, this idea of one human being helping another human being have a catharsis, a facilitator of catharsis. And so that was a seed that was planted completely unconsciously. It did not occur to me that that was even happening at the time. I switched my major. I got a BA in acting and directing from a great school in Pennsylvania called DeSales University. They're home of the Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival. They are one hell of a theater program. Incredible. I got a degree, I like to say, not in acting, but in doing the play. Like they taught you every aspect, and you had to do everything. Costume, I was sewing, you're building sets, you're lighting, you're doing, that's it, everything. You're acting. And then they give you your senior year, you've got to run and you got to produce and run a children's show for a year. So we did Alice in Wonderland, but they're like, here's your budget, go produce Alice in Wonderland. And you have real kids. And if you've ever done children's theater, man, ooh, that is like it's fantastic because they just get up and walk across the stage. And it's one of these things where it was in the round and they're all sitting on the carpet. Like we had these carpets on the edge of the stage and they just sit there and you have these 6-year-olds watching Alice in Wonderland and they just don't care. They just get up, literally walk across the stage. And it's really great as an actor because you have to deal with that. Yeah. You can't ignore the fact that a 6-year-old literally just ran up and grabbed your ear as the March Hare and then went and sat back down. So it was a brilliant training ground in doing the play. I was on my way to New York City to, quote, be an actor. And one of my theater professors is like, look, you have to go audition for URDAS, the Unified Resident Theater Association, audition for all the grad schools in the country, some of the best grad schools. And I wasn't planning on going to grad school. And I know you'll probably relate to this, but I wasn't planning to go to grad school. I wasn't trying to get into grad school, but I was committed to being a good actor and being prepared. So what happened was something really magical. When I went to URDAS, everyone else really wanted to get into graduate school. So they're nervous and warming up and going crazy. And the tension in the room was so high. But there I was just walking around hey man, Michael Cinquino here, how you doing? Patting people on the back, what's up? They're like, dude, I'm serious, I'm warming up. I'm just I'm hey, this is fun. And I walked out on stage, and you walk into a room, and there is like mostly every great MFA program or master's program in the country, with the exception of schools like Yale and Juilliard. They don't go because they're Yale and Juilliard. But Rutgers was in the room. Deborah Headwall was in the room. You know, ACT, FSU, really, really great programs. And I just did not give an F about it. I went out there, I did my work as an actor, enjoyed myself, and walked off stage. And then in those days, you didn't get an email. The next day, you go to see if you were called back at all, or anybody was interested in you. And they put your name on a board, and then you go up to see. And I remember there was a gal that I had become friends with, and she really wanted to get into grad school, and like nobody wanted to, was interested. And I felt really bad for her. And I walked up, and like nearly every school in the room wanted to meet with me. And it was like the first time I was like, oh, like people like me. This is, it was a great ego boost. But I still wasn't going to graduate school until I got a call from Deborah Headwall at Rutgers. And she's like, I'm so glad, she was leaving messages on my phone. I'm not calling back. I'm like, screw it, I'll call her back. I don't want to be impolite. So I call her back, and she's like, I'm so glad you called. We're really interested in you. I'd like you to come out to Rutgers to visit. I'm like, yeah, it's nice, but I'm an actor. I'm going to New York to be an actor. I'm not interested. She's like, I'm not asking.
That's Deborah.
And if you know Deborah, that's Deborah. And I said, okay, fine. I'll drive. I was in Pennsylvania. I drove out to New Brunswick. And Matt, I know you know this. I sat in that white room, and in the back of my consciousness, I knew there was something missing from my acting. Like I knew how to do the play, but as an actor, I just knew there was something missing. And I watched acting that was some of the best I had ever seen in my life.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I thought to myself, I want to be able to do that.
Yes.
And I looked at Deborah, I said, sign me up. And I arrived at Rutgers where we met. And what an experience. I mean, I could just do 6 hours of podcast on that experience.
100.
Right? I mean, there's just something, it was a very unique time. So just to give people some context, this was 2002. 2005 crash, maybe when someone even listening to this podcast were even born yet.
Right.
It was a very special time in history, in recent history. And I had the very good fortune to get like a double whammy at Rutgers. So I was able to have William Esper, rest his soul, legendary acting teacher, rated, if you don't know him, y'all, he was rated basically the best acting teacher in New York, period, hands down, year after year after year. He created the Rutgers program back in 1975, and his reasoning, so says Bill, about why he created the program was that he went to see a show at Juilliard, and he saw a show at Juilliard, and he thought to himself, okay, the actors look good, they sound good, but they don't really have anything going on inside.
Yeah.
This is Bill now, okay? Nothing against the Juilliard folks. I mean, you're obviously brilliant humans, but this was Bill's opinion. So that's why he created Rutgers. And at the time, he was Sanford Meisner's protege. And then what happened was Bill was on his way retiring from Rutgers, but still teaching at his studio, because it was a lot for him. He was in his 80s. He was driving from Manhattan to New Brunswick, to teach. It becomes a lot for 80-something-year-old to do that. So he was like, leaving. And then Israel Hicks came in. And the cool thing for us is that we were the last class to have William Esper as a teacher at Rutgers, like all the way through. Then we had Israel Hicks and his whole regime of teachers. So we had all the Rutgers professors. Then we also had Catherine Fitzmaurice. We had David, I forget his last name, taught Shakespeare. We had Earl Gister, who was Yale Drama School. So like, we had Leonard Petit. So basically we got introduced to some of the best acting teachers in the country, at least, some in the world, whereas most students only get one of these people. You get Bill and that's it. You don't get to have Bill, Earl Gister, Shakespeare, Israel. You don't get to have all these people. We got
a panel of greats. Yeah.
Dude, we got to have a panel of greats. Well said. So I left Rutgers with some of the best actor training on the planet Earth, and it was incredible. But I was not prepared when I arrived in New York City 2 weeks after graduation to do what was necessary to be successful as an actor, which was to be persistent and consistent and not need a darn thing. So going out there for auditions, pouring your heart out, and then walking out of the room and completely letting go of the idea that you should get it, that you want to get it, and letting go of that so disappointment doesn't mount. So that wasn't in my psychology at the time. And so I fell into drugs and alcohol, which had always been a thing in my life. But New York City, you can go as low as you want to go. And then once you're down there, New York will literally put its foot on the back of your head and push you down even further.
Fair.
So yeah, I fell into drugs and alcohol because I just really lost. A friend of mine, I actually, when I was teaching undergraduate students acting at Rutgers as a TA, Brianna O'Melveny is her last name now, Brianna Pack and I. She was a student at the time, but after we graduated from Rutgers, we became very close friends. And I was literally like staying up for 3 days at a time, and she knew something wasn't going good with me. So she showed up in my basement studio apartment on 47th Street, knocked on the door. I crawled back into bed at 3 p.m. after having been up for 2 days. And she was just like, "What are you doing?" Like, look down. Like, this person who used to look up to me is literally physically looking down at me in my bed at 3 p.m. She's like, "What are you doing?" AKA, like, why are you throwing your life away? And at that moment, I started to get better. And then soon after that, a camera fell into my lap, a DSLR, a Nikon D70. This is one of the first digital DSLR cameras. Now, I had no knowledge of photography, no desire to be a photographer. And I instantly became obsessed with photography. And I wanted to learn everything I possibly could. Yes, kids, this is pre-Instagram, pre before everything got ruined. So you only really could display your work on places like Model Mayhem. Tumblr was a great place to do it. Galleries, for the physical world. So I fell into photography, and I started a photography business in New York, and I became successful in that. And I did mostly actor headshots and portraits. And this is a very long answer to your short question, but
No,
it's
not
relevant.
at all. It's a
Yeah.
great story.
Yeah. So I, at the same time, couldn't make a living just in photography at the beginning. So I fell into working at a place called the CIO Strategy Exchange, or CIOS for short. And I had a friend I did martial arts with. She's like, "Yo, we need like a event planner type person who understands restaurants and hotels." I worked in New York restaurants for a while. I was like, okay, sure. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And for the first 2 years, I had no idea even what the hell we did. I worked for a woman named Naomi Seligman and her husband, Ernie Von Simpson. Naomi and Ernie are two legends in Silicon Valley. When Steve Jobs got let go from Apple in the 90s, it was Naomi's shoulder that he literally cried on
Oh, wow.
University Avenue in Palo Alto. And he's like, "I'll never, I'm finished, Naomi." She's like, "No, you're not. You're going to be fine." So Naomi is someone that sits on the boards of companies like Oracle, Dun& Bradstreet, Akamai Technology. She is a living legend. She's in her 90s now. She's still on the
Wow.
board of Oracle. Yeah. So I got to work with these people. And what we did was we brought together 25 Fortune 70 chief information officers twice a year for a strategy exchange. They would sit around a table literally for 3 days and talk about the world's biggest problems as they relate to technology. This is no trade secret stuff because you can see it on the website, but companies like Boeing, the Central Intelligence Agency, JP Morgan, Disney, Exxon, the largest companies on the planet, the heads of the technology within those companies would come in and they would have a conversation. And there was a few parts to this, and this is relevant for how I got into this actors approach or how this integrated. So what would happen is there would be a roundtable discussion just with the CIOs that Naomi would curate, and I would watch her do this masterfully, like a conductor of an orchestra. She would like shut people, and she had no fear or reverence of anybody, and everybody was terrified of Naomi. I mean, like this is like the CIO of British Petroleum.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is a big, smart guy, and he was terrified, like to upset Naomi, like to a degree. You know what I'm saying? Like incredible. But I watched her masterfully, like control this conversation or facilitate it. Then they would bring in CEOs of companies that were selling stuff to our clients. So like Amazon, Microsoft. Yes, the CEO of Microsoft, CEO of Amazon. Andy Jassy would come in. Steve Ballmer. Like people like really big names. Bill Gates was a guest, and they would come in and present to and talk with our clients. And then last but not least, like hot startups would come in. So we'd keep like 2 slots for like startups that could be, relevant to us. And then I would watch them pitch. And what I was doing at the time, not realizing it, I was watching and making connections between what effective communication was and what it wasn't at the highest stakes level in the world kind of thing. And I started to kind of catalog this unconsciously and not realize it. And then I started to be like, well, wait a second, like there seems to be something with acting, connection with acting here. And it seems like the people that are the best and get the best feedback and have the best kind of, results, if you will, are the ones that were predictable in like a structure. of what they were doing, but unpredictable in delivery. That
Mm.
didn't give like a stilted presentation, but at the same time were easy to follow. So it was more like a kind of fluid conversation. And I didn't have this conscious thought at the time, but it was in there. Cut to having that. Then I started actually, because I had this knowledge, I started becoming a pitch coach at Entrepreneurs Roundtable Accelerator in New York City, which is a tech accelerator for startups, a really wonderful organization. And I became a pitch coach there. So I was helping founders with their pitches to investors. And I realized I learned that I had a talent for this, to understand like, oh, like I can actually help them with actor tricks to be more clear and compelling when they're presenting to, investors or
Yeah.
VCs or anything like that.
Anyone.
And yeah, what's that?
Anyone, really.
Anyone, really anyone. So there was that. Then we moved up to New Hampshire. I won't go into that whole story yet. Then we moved up to New Hampshire in 2020, late 2020. And I did kind of like a self-evaluation at the time with a career coach. I'm like, these are the things that I've done. What does the next, few years look like for me? And teaching came up. And I thought to myself, she's like, you need to pursue teaching. I was like, Key is her name. She's wonderful. She has a very Buddhist kind of way of like dealing with career coaching. So it's right up my alley. And she's like, you need to do this. I'm like, well, what? I have a master's degree in acting. I've
Hmm.
never really been an actor. I don't have much of an acting career. I've been like two things. I'm really more of a photographer than an actor. She's like, doesn't matter. I'm like, no one's going to, what am I going to teach? She's like, figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. She's like, find someone who might be teaching and then talk to them. So I actually found someone who was teaching at the University of New Hampshire, a business associate at the time. And she's like, why don't you come in and do like a seminar in my college class about like how to be a better presenter? I was like, oh, yeah, sure. That sounds, yeah, I'd love to do that. So I did it and it went really well. And I loved it. I was like, this is like, I love this. This is blissful. Then from there, I did it again and then did it for some other people. So I kind of became like a regular guest speaker at UNH. Then the heads of what we call the Business in Practice program, which is a section of the business school, a program within the UNH Business School, said, do you want to teach a class? And I was like, yes, I do. And I worked with the two founders of the program for a year. It was a while. And we talked about what the class would be and how it would work. And I was like, well, it's going to be like acting for non-actors. They're like, okay, that's great, but you have to connect it to business in some way. It can't just be like improv. I was like, well, I don't know. Okay. So enter Barbara Minto. Barbara was one of the first female MBA hire at McKinsey & Company in the 1960s. And when she got to McKinsey, she realized that everybody sucked at communication.
Hmm.
I like to say likely because she was surrounded by a bunch of us guys. That joke sometimes goes over, sometimes doesn't. But it's true, I think. And what she found was these guys were writing 30-page reports and eventually coming to a point. And she's like, look, you can't do that. You have to start with your point because our clients read 30 of these things a day and don't have time to read 600 pages. Tell them what this report is about first and give them the option to just not read it because it might not be relevant. But then she also took like standard storytelling framework. She calls it the SCQA, situation, complication, question, and answer, which is basic storytelling, right? Situation, normalcy, right? We have the scene. We have a complication, problem arises, inciting incident. A question arises as a result. What is Luke Skywalker going to do? What's wrong with Barbie, right? I'll use the Barbie movie really quick. Everything's great in Barbie land. Barbie's hanging out with her fellow Barbies. All right, situation, Barbie land, everything's great. Complication, Barbie turns to one of her fellow Barbies. She's like, have you guys ever thought about death? And then the question arises, what the hell's the matter with Barbie? Everybody's like, we don't think about death. What are you talking about? So question comes up, what's the matter with Barbie? And then the rest of the film is really the story, like rising action, so on. So
Yeah.
she combined what she calls the Minto pyramid principle, whereas you start with your main point and then you offer supporting arguments underneath it. You do it in a certain way under her structure. And I have the book on my shelf. It's literally, for those of you that don't, I'm not on camera, it's like, 2 inches thick. It's a very robust system that they still use at McKinsey & Company today whenever they do presentations or whenever they share ideas. But what it is, Matt, it is the best that I know of, the best way to share your thinking. If you're going to share your thinking or an idea, this is probably one of the best ways to do it, so much so that it started at McKinsey in the 1960s. They literally still use it to this day.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going in, I don't know, 50 years, something like that, some ridiculous amount of time. So this brings me to the actor's approach to compelling communication. So the actor's approach to compelling communication is a combination of actor tricks or actor techniques and this strategic communication framework structure. And it's really simple. It's just three things. You have to be predictable in structure, which means we use the Minto pyramid principle. So you create a structure of whatever you're going to share, but then you have to be unpredictable in delivery. Just like us actors, where you know your lines, I know mine, but I cannot preconceive how I'm going to say my line until I see what you do, because I can't see what you do until you do it.
That's right.
And right. And this is the Meisner 101, Rutgers 101. So then there's that. And then last but not least, you have to have a clear point of view in your behavior. So it's just three things: predictable in structure, unpredictable in delivery, with a clear point of view in your behavior. That is literally the whole actor's approach to compelling communication. Now, I love it because it's practicable.
Yeah.
It's not theoretical. You can do it. You can do it right now. I'm doing it right now. And you can use this technique as a craft in basically everything that you do. So for me, it had to be something that is a practicable thing,
Right.
an applicable thing. It could not be, well, here's the theory and you write it. No. You have to, and I love it because you can measure yourself and you can say, was I easy to follow, right? Did I have a predictable, clear structure? And what I mean by predictable is one that human beings can absorb, because we actually have storytelling genes in our DNA,
For
and we
sure.
cannot absorb stories that are not written in a certain structure. So was I easy to follow? Was I unpredictable in delivery? Meaning, was there some spontaneity in how I was delivering it? Not what, because the what is somewhat static. But like when I got to that moment, was there some give? Did I let go of how I thought this thing should go? And then last but not least, could people tell how I feel about
Yeah.
it? I'll never forget Earl Gister, being a Meisner actor. Like, Earl Gister was not a Meisner actor. He's a Yale guy. And he would ask us what's going on in the scene, and we would go into our crafting. We'd be like, well, he's my brother, but he's sleeping with my wife. And like this long, he's like, I don't care. And
Yeah.
he would stomp his foot. He's like, how are you trying to make this person feel in the moment right now? And I'll finish here. For me, Bill Esper once said to us, he said, look, if acting was about words, just words, Charlie Chaplin would have been an idiot.
Mm.
He said, but acting is not about words, it's about behavior. And that's why
Yes.
Charlie Chaplin was a genius. So it's like, for me, it's like, can we see in your behavior how you feel about, to some degree, you don't have to break down in tears or start screaming, but you have to have some sort of unfettered, unfiltered point of view. This is how, if you want now, what's the result? If you really want to move people and you want to connect meaningfully and you really want to get your point across and reach the people who you're meant to reach, this is the way to do it. This is one way to do it.
Yeah. Well, what an incredible journey that you've been on, Michael, so far. I can say so far. I mean, we're still so young, and you've accomplished so many things, and you've recognized and pulled to the surface so many different concepts and things that make a lot of sense. I've always really felt that actors, even if you've done training and you haven't ended up being an actor, that training is transferable to everything in life. Being able to communicate effectively and connect with people and approach things with empathy has always been incredibly important to me. And a lot of what you've said really resonated with me. And I relate a lot to your journey. I didn't want to go to school after high school. I was working as an actor already. And I was like, well, why am I going to go get training for something I'm doing naturally that, I've got it. And boy, was I wrong. Obviously, I went in there and it was really amazing to understand the foundations to really come to the table with something to say. And so
Mm.
I was also really on big on the psychology track. I went and got my master's in psychology thinking I was going to pursue that. But I also hated the data portion of it. I'm not a numbers person. I'm qualitative, not quantitative in
Same,
all of
brother.
my approaches. And so that didn't really pan out. But again, I've come now to the table with more insight and understanding, deep understanding about human beings and how we behave and why we behave the way that we do. And that mix of actor training and psychology, that understanding, being able to come to the table is so important to me. And I'm always curious about where the resistance comes from, with a lot of people. I mean, you're talking so much about kind of this confidence and, understanding the base of what you want to come to the table with, but having that fluidity and unpredictability. What would you say to people that are so scared or worried that they're gonna do the wrong thing or make a mistake? That resistance specifically. I've come I've come up against that constantly in my life.
I wish there was an easy just do this answer, but it's never easy to show up as your truest self.
Absolutely.
And at the risk of turning people off or away or being judged is not an easy thing to do. I always go back to the great John Cleese when he said, "There is nothing that will keep you from being creative so quickly as the fear of making a mistake."
Yes.
And the great Jim Carrey, who said, "When you create yourself to make it, that is when you go out into the world, basically every day. We had a choice every day. When you create yourself to make it, you can either take a chance on being loved or hated for who you really are,
Yep.
or you can kill who you really are, and you can fall into your grave grasping onto a character you never were." So my advice
Yes. Yes.
is that we can't always, and I understand that, companies have cultures. It's just how it is. Relationships are built. You're in this place and space. But for me, I think, if you're feeling like disconnected from yourself, I would say seek out people who you feel that you can be who you really are.
Yeah.
That not
Find your
only
tribe.
find your tribe, man, that accept you for who you really are. And for me, that tribe is actors.
For
I'm
sure.
still in acting class to this day. I got it later on today, 4 o'clock.
Good for you. I got to
Yeah,
get
no,
back into that.
yeah, I love it, man. I'm at Kimball Studio in New York City. Julia Crockett is my teacher. She is a otherworldly, brilliant human being who teaches just from this place of love and courage, and from a very somatic. She's a movement expert and gets hired all the time by the big studios to come in and help big names to work on their physicality
Yeah.
for a role. Yeah, man. But that's there's no easy answer.
I love
It's
that quote, though, the Jim Carrey quote. I've heard that before from him as well. You can fail at the thing that you don't
yeah,
love. So
yeah,
why not
yeah.
take a chance on the thing that you do love? But there, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of perceptions. There are a lot of things, and this kind of brings me to that whole sensitivity aspect. I loved what you've been posting. I love what you've been posting on LinkedIn recently about being hypersensitive, because I've always felt that it's been something that has weighed me down for so
Mm,
long. This over analyzing things and feeling so deeply,
mm,
which was great as an actor when I was pursuing that, because I could bring all that stuff to the table. But a lot of people who identify as being sensitive think that they're broken or they're too much. And I think that you're right. You got to find the people, you got to find your tribe and the people that resonate with what you bring to the table. But what would you say to someone who's still like kind of stuck in that shame of like, I'm not really who I would like to be or show to the world?
Well, as Brene Brown says, shame loves the dark.
Yeah,
Shame, lowest human vibration. Lower than guilt, lower than hate, way lower than anger, lower than any of those things. And there's no lower human vibration than shame. And this is not a place any human being deserves to live. And if you're around people that activate your shame or shame you for being who you really are, I feel like you got to do your best to get away from them as much as you can.
I agree.
Yeah, and I know it's not always feasible because
Right.
sometimes these people are caretakers.
Or it
Sometimes
might be your job that you rely on in order to pay the bills and all
and
that
feed your
stuff.
family.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. So I mean, you've got to find those pockets of places where you can connect with that to remind yourself that it exists and to keep hope alive, if you will.
Sure.
So I would say for someone who's struggling, look around, find some folks where you feel like these are my people, where
Yeah.
you breathe easy. When I first, I don't, being very transparent, I don't really go to AA meetings that much anymore. I've been drug and alcohol free. It's going to be 10 years in September.
Wow.
But
Congratulations.
thank you very much. AA was really instrumental for me in the beginning because of the stories. Because when I sat in that room, I was like, oh, these are my people. These are also people who are highly sensitive. These are also, and I'm not alone. And the thing is, the reason why I act, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I think it's important. Like the reason why I started acting, Matt, was because I wanted people to like me.
100%. I'm with you. There are a lot of things that you've said. I really feel like I've been on the same wavelength for sure. I've
Yeah,
always had that tendency. Like if I do this, it's going to bring more people into my life. People are going to see
right,
me in a certain
right.
way. Blah, blah.
Yeah, but it's not the reason why I act now. And the reason why I act now is so that people won't feel alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I've reframed my reasoning behind being performative in any way, shape, or form in the last few months, doing this podcast specifically. For the last 5 or 6 years, my creativity has been dormant. A
Mm,
lot of life situations kind of put me in the headspace of isolating and all this stuff. And, at first it feels comfortable and safe. And then After a while, all that stuff compounds and you just feel worse and worse and worse. And the moment that you take action, do something that feels uncomfortable, but that feels real for you, that makes you feel authentically you, and then putting it out there and not thinking too much about it. Doing those things has made me feel so much more alive. It feels like it's giving me purpose, and it feels very aligned with helping people. Like you said before, wanting to help other people, connect with people in an authentic, honest way.
I love your note on action. It's really the only thing. It's
Yeah.
not lights, camera, think about it. It's not lights, camera, pause. It's not lights, camera, ruminate. There is one word on set when it's time to go, and it's action. And
Yes.
whether you're feeling it or not, you gotta go.
Yes.
Unless you're a super freaking movie star who's producing, you know what I'm saying? Like, unless you're Tom Cruise, something like that, your director says go, you gotta go. Everybody did their job up to that point. The whole crew has been, working through the night, and everybody around you has done their job. Now it's your turn to do your job. And that job happens when they call action. And going back to like, what do people do? We have to act. What kind of action? The kind of action that is not quite comfortable for
Yeah.
us. There's just no way around. If your life is going to change in any way, if you're not happy with where you are, there are and I'm not one of these people that's like, just go do this and I
Right.
hate that. I really do, because everybody's different. Everybody has their own context. Yes, success leaves clues, but be like, don't eat this. You should be eating meat. It's like, you don't know that.
Right.
Like you cannot know that. So it's like the only advice I think that I could give for everybody that is a principle, that is a self-evident truth, is that if you want something to be different, you have to do differently than you were doing previously. And this only takes one thing, and it's courage. Not a
Absolutely.
small order. And I'm no different, and I have to face this every day. Every day I have to choose to do something that is beyond. I run my own business, and if I don't act consistently and persistently, no money comes in.
Absolutely.
It's
It's
just how
not
it
one
is.
and done. It's not one and done.
No,
You've
no.
got to you have to make the decision every single day to continue to go after the things that you want. I've been working in corporate America for a very long time, since my sons were born 11 years ago, in order to make the money necessary to help provide and all that thing. And it's never been something that has been a passion of mine. It's a, clock in, clock out kind of mentality, or it has been. But the one thing that I've always brought to the table was my empathy. And
Mm,
I've always been known throughout all of the companies that I've worked for as the person that somebody can come to my desk and have a conversation with. And that's not to say that I'm not good at my job, or I'm not, great and skilled at the administrative responsibilities of the job. It means that I feel like over the years, a large part of my success has been my ability to communicate effectively with other people and empathize with other people. That sensitivity has always been the superpower. But you've got to do more than putting on that mask in the right situation. You've got to put that toward the thing that is actually going to bring you joy, and
mm.
hopefully financial stability as well. Do you think that there's a future where emotional fluency becomes a standard leadership skill and not just a soft skill? I feel like it still kind of is. You see leadership, and I feel like the words that come to mind are strong and more stoic and things like that. But I've always admired the most the people that are empathetic and sensitive and emotionally intelligent.
There was an article that came out 2 days ago in the Wall Street Journal, and they were talking about how difficult it is for recent college graduates to get jobs because
I heard about
the
this.
way, what's that? Yeah, the way that it used to go is that you just graduate with your, business degree from, your bachelor's degree, whatever, and you go work for a company and you do grunt work for, you do report reading, data analysis, whatever low level kind of stuff that is not really that compelling. But in exchange, one, you get to have a job. Two, you get paid. Three, you get some experience to eventually kind of work your way up in this company. The issue now is that the machines can do that work much faster and much better than any
Sure.
sort of college grad, and it's just better for the company because us human beings are awful. We get sick. We're lazy. We're not consistent. We go out drinking the night before. We don't show up. We miss work. All this stuff. We're very costly. You got to pay for health insurance. So anytime a CEO can lower a headcount, they're happy to do so, whether they want to admit that or not. It's like, just get these people out of here. Literally, this is terrible. So there's an irony here that's going on, that in order to stay relevant, You have to be able to do things. There's this really cool irony that is happening, I think, globally right now with technology and humanity. In that the only way to stay relevant as a human is to be more human.
Yeah.
To do things that the machines cannot do,
Be human
because
better.
you have to human better. And
Yeah.
how do you do that? Well, you have to embody empathy. You have to learn how to listen with the intent to understand. You have to learn how to be fully present. You have to learn your own emotional intelligence. You have to learn your own stuff. You have to be courageous. You have to be innovative. You have to take risks. You have to do all these things that the machines cannot do. Because if the machine can, like coding, I remember like, oh, just go to coding school. You'll always have a job.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yep.
And it's like right out the window. And so for me, unless you have basically two options, I think two main paths, if you will. It's not nuanced, I know, but there's two main paths. You can either get a job in the physical world as an electrician, plumber, construction, something like that. You can go to the skilled trades and you're going to work for a long time, because it's going to be a long time before, there's
It's automated.
yeah, before there's a robot, putting in electricity. It's going to be a really long time before that happens. So that's one safe path, or one kind of quote, somewhat guaranteed path. The next path is, if you're going to roll into corporate America, you have to learn how to be a great communicator and be a great idea sharer and listener and all these the quote soft skills. Do you know where soft skills came from, the history of that phrase?
No, tell me.
Actually didn't either until only a few months ago. The US Army created the term, and they did a study on artillery officers. And they wanted to understand how they could make their artillery officers better at like kind of commanding the battalion. And when they studied it, they learned that the officers that had better, quote, soft skills, hard meaning machine,
Right.
like, literally hard, the machine, the officers that had better communication skills and, quote, soft skills had better results than the officers that merely relied on, quote, hard skills alone. This is how the U.S. Army birthed the term, soft skills in their study. The military's done a lot of great studies on leadership and psychology and stuff like that. So this is where the term comes from. So for me, I don't love the term soft skills, because a lot of people think they're optional.
Aha.
They're more,
They're vital.
I think they're more like heroic virtues or absolutely mandatory skills. To my, the class that I teach at University of New Hampshire is called the Work Ready Communicator. And basically I teach them the actor's approach to compelling communication, so they can go out with listening skills, speaking skills, stuff like that, that's going to help them stay relevant, or at least interesting to an employer.
And I feel like we've lost a lot of that ability, especially with, now with AI, but just with social media. And I think a lot of people, more often than not, are isolating as opposed to being in person and having conversations with other devices in their hands.
They are, man. And it's like, I'm not a pilot and don't know a ton about flying, but I do know that pilots have to maintain a certain amount of hours, and they have to actually be at the controls. So you can't, the machines now can take off and land. You don't need a pilot to do that. Literally press the button and you're up and you're down. But they have to maintain their skills or they're going to degrade. Like any skill.
Yes.
Like if you don't exercise for 6 months, you're not going to stay in shape. I know it's a silly analogy, and it's like, oh, of course, Michael, why are you saying this? Well, we're literally, I'm holding up my phone right now. The only interactions we have, and I gotta say, man, like I don't know if all this remote work is healthy.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's definitely convenient.
it
That's
is,
for
dude,
sure.
it
and
is.
it's safe for those people that feel anxiety in social settings and things like that. But I agree with you to a large extent, lose so much of your innate ability and desire to connect with other people because you're not in those situations nearly as often anymore. So what's the next chapter for you in this work? I mean, you said that you're teaching a class, University of New Hampshire. You've also got the studio, Soho Creative Studio.
Yeah,
Tell me more
we're
about it.
yeah. Soho's a thought leadership platform. So what we do is we bring in folks that are subject matter experts, and we either create content with them or launch podcasts for them. Now, not the traditional like we're on right now, not a traditional podcast for podcasting. Like,
Yeah.
like it's really more of a vehicle for them to be able to, one, share their subject matter expertise with the world. Two, to continue to be forward thinking. So we work with a lot of folks in finance, technology, and in spaces where you have to keep thinking that what's happening in the next 3 months. And there's a lot of, so we learned. So I basically took the Kaios model that I mentioned earlier, and I brought it onto this platform. So I bring people on that are subject matter experts that have no video, no subject matter expertise, and we create this online presence for them. And they're able to, they post stuff on LinkedIn. They can share stuff with clients. And then what happens is, we work with a software development company for a really long time. So they would bring on, so like I'm there as a producer, you have one guy who's an engineer and then one gal from another company who's a client of theirs. And they basically just talk around a specific topic. Like one of the most recent episodes we did, we had Chuck D's producer on. So I had Chuck D's producer, and then I had a guy who was a product manager. So a technologist and an artist, right?
Yeah.
And they were talking about the future of music and technology and creativity and technology. So it's I guess kind of a platform where people can have control. So it's not like you just go out into the world. So it's like, we curate a program for you where you come on. So I'm one of the producers right now. The dream for Soho is to continue to bring on producers and have them in different subject matter areas.
Right,
Like whatever,
right.
medical, like somebody who really knows medical, they're going to be the producer. They're going to have guests on, for clients. So really it's a lot of companies, most companies I would say, are not using any video still. Not using any sort of video leverage or brand awareness or anything like that. So for us, we're reaching out to those companies. They're like, hey, you have this website, you have all this LinkedIn, you have no video. No one even knows your CEO.
Right.
And your CEO is a great speaker. Let's get this person visible. So really, we're a platform for visibility, for brand awareness, and for sharing subject matter expertise. I had no idea we were going to do this until about a year and a half ago. And, we kind of transitioned to this. It was a really, really great fit. So
I love that that's been something that's happened quite a few times in your journey. It seems like you didn't expect it to go this way, but it seems like you're always willing to say yes and entertain the possibility of a new thing. And I think that's an amazing quality. I think that more of us need to have that courage to say yes to things that are outside of our comfort zone or that you don't know whether we'll fail or succeed. That's a
it's tough.
through line of your life. It seems like you just take the chance, take the
Yeah,
risk.
it is, man. And, like most of the time it doesn't work out.
And that's
Sometimes
fine.
it does. Yeah. But and then the other part is I'm at Northwestern University right now, getting a master's in applied psychology or clinical mental health. So down the road, the aim is to be a therapist, at least part-time or part of what I do. And I want to work with other highly sensitive people and or people that are performers. I really want to help keep performers well, or performing artist wellness. Like for folks that have vulnerability that is a requisite for their job, those are the people that I want to help keep well and help them keep on Broadway or in front of the camera, and to be able to help them manage and to be as full total wellness, like physical, emotional, spiritual, all that stuff, to be able to keep that person who has to show up on a camera or in front of a large audience and has to pour their heart out, to be able to keep them doing that in a way that's healthy for them, and that they can continue to exist doing that work and not find themselves in a space where they're burnout or worse, addicted to something or
Yeah, I mean, you see it so often with performers and artists. It is a very, very needed area for sure. I've also given thought to continuing in school and maybe trying to get back on the therapy track, because I also would love to be in that space. So that's you've inspired me a little bit to give it some more thought.
Northwestern's got a great program.
Yeah. But I love it. I love it. I think you've had an incredible journey. Michael, thank you for being here and for the work that you're doing. I think that there's something incredibly healing about hearing someone speak so openly about their sensitivity and their design and their desire to lead with truth and precision. Your story is a reminder that when we stop apologizing for how we're built and start learning how to drive the thing, we don't just survive the road, we move others along the way. So to everyone listening, if you want to learn more about Michael's work, you can find him on LinkedIn and at michaelcinquino.com. Any other places, Michael, that we can find you? Or those
I'm private on Instagram, but you're welcome to follow. Yeah.
They'll give it a shot. Throw them a request.
Yeah.
I'll drop all those links in the show notes. And as always, be kind to your nervous system. It might just be the high performance engine that you've been trying to quiet. Thank you so much, Michael. You're amazing. You've got such an amazing story. I'm blown away. I didn't know about so much of that stuff. It's very inspiring.
Dude, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.